boys. KingRaliant here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for all the continued support. Most of all, I wanted to bring you guys 50 tips and tricks in under 15 minutes. Tip number 1, you want to avoid paying taxes in the towns and cities where you know the companies are going to hike them up in the beginning. Craft your food and potions at your campfire. Tip number 2, need a completely free way to heal yourself up over time. Equip some water, eat some raw meat, it'll do the same thing. Tip number 3, this happens when you actually ever stun an enemy. Do keep in mind that if you hit them again, you will break that stun. Do a heavy attack or get behind them, get a guaranteed critical hit, and you're good to go. Tip number 4, you get a 50% off discount with the first house that you will buy in New World. So choose your house location wisely, probably be a future video on that. Tip number 5, want to make some easy money? Go to the trading post, select all settlements, go to raw resources, find which resource you want to sell. You'll see all the prices for that resources, all the locations. You'll see which one's expensive, which one's cheap, which one's right in the middle. And you can travel to those cheap regions, buy the materials, and sell them in the more expensive ones. Tip number 6, if you notice whenever you roll, you kind of do this stutter step where you don't move forward anymore. Well, while you're rolling, immediately swap your weapons, and when you get done rolling, you will come back up and automatically still be sprinting forward. And I'm gonna tell you right now, for PvP, this is gonna be something you're gonna wanna definitely get in the habit of doing. Tip number 7, you wanna stay in that light armor threshold? No big deal. You don't have to go full light armor. Normally, 4 light armor, 1 medium chest will keep you within that weight limit. It's based off of weight limit, not going off of a full entire light armor set, which you're going to want because you want that far roll dodge animation. Tip number 8, equipped items do not count towards your total character's weight. Keep that in mind. If you're getting a little overburdened and you can swing it, throw a shield on or something to loosen up some of that weight in your inventory. Tip number 9, the lighter you weigh in New World, the less Azoth it's going to cost you when you want to fast travel. Tip number 10, you can actually pin recipes. So if you want to start looking and collecting specific ingredients because you want to craft something in New World, utilize this. Pin that recipe by going to the station in your settlement that will create that item that you're looking to craft. Click pin recipe, good to go. The recipe will now show up on your UI somewhere, and it'll even show you which match you are missing until you can successfully craft it. Tip number 11, regen potions do have shorter cooldowns than regular healing potions. They actually don't even share a cooldown. So it's kind of actually a really good idea to double dip on those potions. Tip number 12, don't get in the habit of repairing your gear as often as you reload in any Call of Duty game. Only repair it whenever it's fully broken. That's all you need to do. You won't lose any stats when it's completely broken, so just wait till it gets to that point, repair it, good to go. You won't have wasted any mats to do so. It's the most efficient way to do it. Tip number 13, you can actually dodge up to 3 times if you wait a few seconds after your first dodge. If you don't wait, you're only really gonna get 2 because your stamina is gonna run out. Basically, what's gonna happen is you're gonna get like a couple extra points of stamina, and what that's going to do is it's going to give you that ability to do 3 dodges almost back to back. It's a little clunky, but you'll get used to it. Tip number 14, going back to that 50% house discount that you get, when you are choosing your first place, you want to choose the region that you know you're going to be in most of the time. Don't do it in some place that you're rarely ever going to see, because you're going to get that heavy discount, and having a house in that region is going to benefit you more than you realize. Tip number 15, the higher gear score that you actually currently have equipped, the higher chance that you will get a higher gear score drop from chests, monsters, and the likes. Tip number 16, higher level monsters will be able to see you further away. Usually it's within about a 10 level range, but that also works vice versa. If you are about 10 levels above the said monster, they're less likely to see you and aggro onto you as you get close. Tip number 17, you actually can respec your attribute points for free up until level 20, and you can do it as many times as you like without any penalty. However, after level 20, that initial respec cost is going to cost 12 gold more than the last one. So please do keep that in mind so you don't go respec heavy. You're actually going to want to utilize some type of build planner, which I did make a video about, which if you want to go ahead and click that. Tip number 18, you can also respec your weapon points anytime before level 10. However, after level 10, it's going to cost you some Azoth to respec. So again, you're going to want to utilize some of those build planner resources online, completely free. That way you're not spending valuable resources just to play around in Theorycraft. Tip number 19, if you want to look around the camera, typical fashion in survival games, you can do so. Hold left alt, you can look around the camera while running without changing your actual running direction. Tip number 20, the higher your level in a gathering skill, the more experience it will yield when you gather with that specific skill. Tip number 21, each of these towns that you have that are owned by a certain faction and territory, they actually have a free little resource chest that you can actually go in. So do not skip that. Look around somewhere. If your faction owns that region and somewhere in that settlement, you should see some free stuff. Tip number 22, if you're gonna go out and about for questing or what have you, do yourself a favor, get yourself a food buff because it will give you a passive heal for roughly about half an hour. Tip number 23, you can actually transfer items between storage chests. However, there's a little bit of a kicker. There's a small gold fee and you have to make sure it's going from an owned faction to owned faction. You can't send it from Marauder to Syndicate. It's gotta go from Marauder to Marauder, etc., etc. Tip number 24, gotta self-cast on yourself really, really fast. Hold left control, then cast your spell. Quickest way to self-cast. Tip number 25, you can actually barrel roll in this game. While you're laying down, simply hold shift and then press A or D on the keyboard. And depending on what direction you want to roll, you're going to roll that way. Tip number 26, headshots will give you a for sure crit in this game, dealing extra damage as most critical hits do. That's pretty generic. And aside from headshots, hitting them from behind will also give you a guaranteed critical hit as well. If you don't see orange numbers, you didn't crit them. Tip number 27, if you want to see if someone's flagged in New World, basically aim at them while they're really far away from you. And if their icon turns red, they're looking to hunt. Tip number 28, say you actually get into a really tough spot, you accidentally fall off a cliff, you get shoved in between two logs, you can't move, encounter a bug, what have you. Click escape, go to the menu, click the unstuck feature. You're gonna go back to the nearest town and you'll be unstuck and good to go. Tip number 29, these blue lore pages that you're gonna see throughout the world. Most of the time when you go up to them, you think you gotta press E or whatever your interact button is. You gotta open them, read them, then collect them, blah, blah, blah. However, by default, if you just press T, you will actually immediately clear all that out. You'll get some experience from it and you'll be on your way. Tip number 30, if you're not using the sword in board build, don't use a shield. It doesn't work like the pan in PUBG. You don't get the stats from it. It's not a stat stick. It basically just takes up weight for your armor weight, and it's going to basically make it to where you can never really achieve light armor. So again, just don't use a shield in this case. Tip number 31, if you're going to go out and gather or you're going to farm dungeons, elites, or what have you, find yourself a luck gear set. If it's viable and you're not hindering the group or yourself from being able to accomplish your goal. But if you can swing this, it's going to give you an increased chance of drops and it's going to be a really good way to farm. Tip number 32, if you're traveling to a region that your faction controls, it's going to be cheaper for you. Tip number 33, when you pick up the vials of Azoth, or as I like to call them, blue juice, you have a cap of 1,000 Azoth or blue juice. So do yourself a favor, don't just open up those vials as soon as you get them, open them up when you absolutely need them. You're going to get a lot from side quests, main quests, farming, blah, blah, blah. Tip number 34, if you have something in your inventory that you don't want to get rid of, you don't want to accidentally discard, and it's something you want to make sure you keep forever, hover over it with the mouse, hold L and left click it, and then all of a sudden you're going to lock that and it's going to prevent you from doing that. Really, really cool feature that doesn't seem to be known as much, and I really would recommend taking advantage of that. Tip number 35, upgrade Druid tools in New World as fast as you can. Having upgraded tools is going to save you so much time with gathering, which there's really going to be no way around it. You guys are going to have to gather in some way, shape, or form. Tip number 36, if your guys' armor or weapon or anything like that has a gem slot, just go and craft a gem. It's pretty easy. You go to the sun coating table and it doesn't really take that much to be able to make some starter gems. Tip number 37, there's actually something in this game that's very similar to Witcher 3 if you've ever played it, which is these weapon coatings. You can make these at the Arcane Repository. It's the same place that you will go if you want to make potions and runes and stuff like that. I really love this and I really don't feel like it's talked about as much. Definitely go give it a look. It's going to want to be the best ways to give yourself a little bit of boost in damage for if you're going into a dungeon or you're going to go farm a certain group of mobs and say they're weak to a certain attribute. It's going to be the best way to add that on. Tip number 38, each of the dungeons in New World, they do require a key per se to open them. It's not going to be just like WoW and everything else that we're used to where we queue up or we go there, we walk in the portal. We actually have to give it a key in order to enter. You can craft these keys. They have a 1-day cooldown each, but you go to the stone cutting table, the same place you're going to craft the gems, and you can craft them there. Tip number 39, if you want to craft higher tier gear, your settlement's actually going to have the appropriate tier level crafting station in play for you to be able to do that. Tip number 40, you can actually throw all of your raw resources and ingredients for crafting and above in your storage shed. They don't actually have to be in your inventory for them to count when you're actually crafting. They will also go off your storage shed. Tip number 41, if you're carrying any of these things called honing stones, they're really good. They're a short burst of damage that you can apply for a short period of time. Craft them, carry them, use them when you absolutely need to, and you need that massive damage boost. Tip 42, go to the gameplay section of settings and turn on always show weapons. The reason why you want to do this is you're going to be able to track the cooldown of the weapon that's currently not your main. Tip number 43, before you actually start doing the quest objective and you're out in the wild and you're far away, do yourself a favor, place a camp nearby. That way if you die, you can spawn at the camp and you'll be good to go. Tip number 44, always check outside the front of dungeons. The reason why is because there's normally some side quest giver, and these do give a pretty healthy amount of experience that you are going to want to take advantage of, and it is normally repeatable. Tip number 45. If you have too many things chasing you or you aggro too many mobs, just run away from them. Eventually they will de-aggro, but if you're in a pinch, find something to climb up onto. If you climb up on something, they normally can't follow you and they normally will de-aggro. Now, side note with this doesn't always work. There was a few instances where they kind of got crafty and it didn't always seem to work that way, so this could be fixed. Tip number 46. This goes back to my tip about rolling. Do your best to never use all of your rolls and get yourself to 0 stamina. It's kind of like an energy resource management if you ever played Feral Druid or Rogue in World of Warcraft, because if you do hit 0, it's going to take longer for it to regenerate than if you brought it down to 1. Tip number 47. The house recall that you will get, you can reduce said cooldown by spending Azoth or blue juice. This is a really good idea because this usually is a better way than trying to do the fast traveling method with the shrine, because you can't actually make that cheaper. Tip number 48. You can actually cancel the fishing animation if you just simply right click, giving you the ability to reset and get back to it. Tip number 49. If you were actually in the bushes or the grass, it's really hard for people in PvP to see you. This is actually one of the best things I feel like they've added and kept in from the survival aspect of the game. So do yourself a favor, utilize that environment, because on top of that, while you're prone, your name tag's also not going to show up. Last and final tip, it's tip number 50. In the very start, you can actually skip the New World tutorial. Go to escape, go to the game menu and click skip to New World. You're going to want to do this after you talk to the captain and you get yourself that sword and shield. Bingo bango, you're good to go. There you guys have it. There is 50 of the best tips and tricks that I could come up with in under 15 minutes. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I really hope you got something out of it. And if you did, I'd really appreciate you clicking that like button, click the subscribe button, ring the ding dong. We're doing daily videos. And if you're ever interested, I do stream on Twitch. You can find that description down below. Be sure to share some good vibes. Stay shiny.